confession, a long-buried truth, a family on the brink of collapse. No one knows what exploded inside Nicole in that moment, when she casually let slip a sentence that shattered Ted's entire world. Kat was not his biological daughter. No tears, no trembling, just a cold stab in the right place. No one could tell if she said it out of remorse, revenge, or something darker. But in that moment, everything that had once been true became false. Every hug, every promise, every year of cultivating the image of a good father turned into doubt. And worst of all, it might just be the beginning. Because if Nicole was telling the truth, then who was Kat's biological father? Would the revelation shatter not just a family, but the entire underground network of power that operated within Fairmont Crest? Or is it just a cruel psychological game, where Nicole is the one who controls all emotions, forcing Ted to collapse even without seeing the evidence? And how will Kat, the girl who thought she knew who she was, endure this blow when all her trust is torn apart by a single sentence? In the endless war between her parents, will Kat be the witness or the ultimate victim? The marriage between Nicole and Ted was once a symbol of determined devotion. Two people who seemed to hail from different worlds yet remained resolved to build a home together. Through years of ups and downs, they weathered countless storms. From the quiet wounds festering in Nicole's heart to the times Ted steeled himself to protect the family against waves of criticism, loss, and betrayal swirling around Fairmont Crest. But all of that effort seemed to turn to dust in a final instant when Nicole, in a state both calm and aching, ended the marriage with a confession that brought everything crashing down. She did more than declare the end of a bond already cracked. She delivered a truth Ted had never anticipated. Kat, the daughter he loved as if she were his own flesh and blood, might not be his biological child. That truth arrived like a storm with no warning, sweeping away everything Ted had believed to be solid in his life. He had always trusted that, no matter how many misunderstandings or arguments came between him and Nicole, the love they shared for Kat would remain a sacred, inviolable tie. Yet it was Nicole herself who shattered that certainty, stripping bare a buried piece of memory, a vein of guilt she had kept sealed for years. In that moment, everything inside him seemed to collapse. The times he had held his daughter close, the promises to stand by her and keep her safe. All of it stained by deception if what Nicole said was true. He could not fathom why she chose this moment to tell him, nor whether she did it from remorse, a desire to free herself, or simply to sever the last tether between them. Caught in the eye of this upheaval, Kat felt as if she were sinking into an earthquake with no escape route. A young woman raised in a father's love, certain she knew her origins and her place, now forced to face the possibility that the foundation beneath her was an illusion woven from her mother's lies. She must not only ask who brought her into the world, but also reconsider everything about her bond with the father she had always believed was her own. The sting of betrayal came not only from Nicole, but also as a reflexive pain when she met Ted's doubtful gaze. The man who had once looked at her as a treasure now shadowed by uncertainty about blood. And then Kat began to doubt herself in turn. Did she truly belong here? What right did she have to stand in the house she had called her own all these years if blood no longer bound them? Ted was different. He did not cry, did not shout, did not smash anything. But the look in his eyes as he left the house carried the ashes of a man who had just lost everything: love, trust, and a fragment of his soul. He could not immediately accept Nicole's words, yet he lacked the calm to dismiss them as a mere retaliatory blow. A command rose within him. He must know the truth at any cost, and so he began his search for proof, quietly, coldly, obsessively. DNA testing was his first thought, but he also knew that biology could clarify bloodlines without resolving feelings. He feared the result, but feared uncertainty more. And in that fear another torment surfaced. If Kat were not his biological daughter, would he be strong enough to love her as before? Could the father-daughter bond they had built over so many years survive a biological shock? Nicole, on the other hand, lived under a silent self-inflicted punishment. Even after speaking the truth, she found no relief. She knew what she had done might permanently destroy the lives of the two people she loved most. Yet she had no other choice, or so she told herself. Perhaps she was exhausted by the lie, or perhaps she had lost all hope of healing with Ted and chose the cruelest way to end things. She could not continue building a relationship while haunted by guilt. She was not sure Kat would forgive her, and she accepted that as the inevitable cost of a decision made years ago, when she chose to conceal Kat's biological father in order to protect the appearance of a perfect, if fabricated, family. This crisis is more than the collapse of a household. It is a declaration of war on the very line between sincerity and pretense in kinship. Fairmont Crest, a place supposedly built on lofty values, once again becomes an arena where bleeding secrets face off. No one knows whether Ted will choose forgiveness or pursue legal warfare to strip Kat of inheritance, status, even memory. No one knows whether Kat will be brave enough to demand a test or will avoid it for fear of losing the only father she has ever known. And no one can say whether Nicole is the only keeper of the truth, or if there is an even larger secret still buried. One none of them have dared to confront. If Nicole's account is true, it could tear apart what was built out of love. Yet it could also offer a chance to see one another not solely through blood, but through memory, affection, and time. To reach that place, however, they must pass through a landscape of bitterness and conflict, where every fork in the road risks a point of no return. And amid that terrain, beyond the gates enters a new phase, one where relationships are no longer just right or wrong, but grueling trials between biology and a heart that has loved. It is a turning point that shapes the fate of three people, and the opening volley in a chain of tragedies simmering just beyond those seemingly peaceful gates. Nicole carried this secret too long to count it in years or months. It was not merely a past mistake, but a persistent scar that clung to every family meal, every gentle hug Ted gave Kat, and even their most tranquil moments. Anyone who thinks she kept the secret to protect someone may have misread her, or rather, underestimated the fear and inner turmoil she buried. Nicole once believed she could take the secret to her grave, that if she were diligent and devoted enough, the truth would never rise to the surface. But time is no ally. After months of tautness between her and Ted, after argument upon argument with no end, the truth surged within her as a final act of defiance, or a self-inflicted sentence, or the fatal stab to end a love that had died long ago. The question is, why now? Is it because Ted is on the verge of returning to someone else? Because Nicole realized she had lost control? Or worse, is it not the truth at all, but a calculated lie? A blade meant to sever the last bond between her and Ted? None of the possibilities is comforting. If it is true, Nicole betrayed Ted not only in deed but with years of silence. If it is a lie, she is crossed into a new brutality, willing to trample the sacred bond of father and child just to shake off the final remnants of feeling and responsibility. And perhaps for that reason, Ted, the man who once stood before the town to defend his wife's honor, who once bowed his head to apologize even when he was not at fault, chose, for the first time, to let go. Not out of disappointment, but because he could no longer discern what was real in a world riddled with deceit. Ted feared not truth itself, but being manipulated by a counterfeit truth. He had thought himself capable of accepting anything so long as it came from a place of sincerity. Nicole shattered that sanctity. She made him doubt not only her love, but his own ability to judge character. That was the cruelest cut. In that instant, he understood there was nothing left to save. He needed no DNA result, no investigation into the identity of the biological father. What he needed was withdrawal, quiet but absolute, like a warrior who, after a lifetime of fighting, finally lays down his weapon upon realizing the battle is no longer worth the wounds he bears. Meanwhile, Kat had no idea what bargains the adults were striking over her life. but she felt the unease in her mother's eyes, the sudden distance in Ted, a dull blade scraping at her mind day after day. In moments of self-questioning, she could not help but ask, if she is not Ted's daughter, then who is she? Where did she come from? Why is she not allowed to know? She began recalling fragments of childhood, times when her mother abruptly cut off conversations about pregnancy, those moments when Ted offhandedly mentioned the brief breakup he and Nicole had had before Kat's birth. Suddenly, it all seemed suspicious. And in the whirlpool of doubt, a single name surfaced. A man who had been in Nicole's life during that gap. A name never spoken in the Dupree house, yet haunting its silence like a ghost. Joey. The man who once blew into Nicole's life like a strange wind, who vanished after a summer of passion and chaos, could be the missing piece. If that is true, Nicole's revelation is not the end of the shock. Given Joey's political entanglements, whispered ambitions, and secrets tied to the city council, confirming him as Kat's father would be a true tempest. Beyond the personal scandal, the consequences for power, property, and reputation would ignite a remorseless war over inheritance, identity, and honor. One that could drag the entire Dupree family into a crisis dwarfing earlier dramas at Fairmont Crest. If the truth comes out, Kat may not only lose a father but face a new one who never properly stepped into her life. She will have to choose. Cling to the memory of the man who raised her with love despite a lack of blood, or accept a stranger whose veins carry her blood but who gave her none of her childhood. There is no right answer to that equation, and Kat, no matter her strength, cannot walk away unscarred as everything spirals. Nicole's silence feeds suspicion about her real motives. Is she telling the truth, testing Ted's reaction, or worse, opening a new front in pursuit of some power only she understands? Whatever the case, her confession has awakened a sleeping demon in the past, and once awake, it will not drift back to sleep easily. Once again, Fairmont Crest becomes the epicenter of an emotional crisis, a place where people who once lived for one another now turn to doubt each other, where blood tests love and every wrong choice demands a price. This time, the price may be an entire family. If the biological father proves to be Joey, or someone even more unexpected, a dark secret from Nicole's past, the shock will rattle not only Ted and Kat, but also the standing the Duprees have built over the years. If there is one thing Fairmont Crest has witnessed in Ted, it is the patience and backbone of a man not easily broken by storms. But this time he faces not a political rival or a media scandal, but a death blow from the person he once thought would hold his hand to the end. Nicole. The moment her confession landed, Ted could not act as he once did. No reflex, no swift decision. Only a prolonged numbness, a psychological state even he had not foreseen. He sat for hours in what had been his office, staring at a photo of the three of them on a beach trip, as all his memories warped around an invisible crack. The smiles of years past now felt alien. He could not decide, not out of weakness, but because he knew, once he opened the door to DNA testing, no matter the result, nothing he knew of his life would remain intact. Then, reason returned. Ted asked his private attorney to petition for DNA testing without Nicole's consent, invoking his rights as guardian and the legal responsibilities tied to finances, wills, and inheritance agreements. He did not tell Kat, nor did he confront Nicole. He needed the truth on his terms. Meanwhile, his legal team sketched out a strategy. Sue Nicole for years of legal deception. They called it marital fraud, accusing her of hiding the child's biological identity and thereby saddling Ted with financial, emotional, and legal burdens he had never honestly agreed to. If the court accepted the claim, not only could Kat's guardianship be rescinded, but Nicole might face severe financial penalties or even investigation for falsifying a birth certificate, should Ted prove she tampered with medical records to conceal the real father. Nicole was not surprised by the summons. She knew it was coming and understood that her strike could not end without retaliation. But she had not expected Ted to choose such a ruthless legal path, with no trace of their former tenderness. In her, regret and anger churned in opposite currents. She had thought that confessing would free them both, or at least allow things to end quietly. She misjudged the depth of Ted's wound. Now the two stood at the edge of a merciless fight, where the court would adjudicate not only the law but also serve as the ring for the final blows of feelings crushed over years. Kat, inevitably, was the one to bear the brunt. No one asked her when her life was hauled onto a lab table, reduced to cold genetic numbers in a sterile room. No one prepared her to watch her parents turn into strangers trading punches through lawyers, filings, and ravenous gossip. At first, she screamed herself hoarse, shattering anything within reach. Then the chaos outside numbed her. She no longer recognized herself. At school, the pitying or prying looks from friends and teachers made her feel as if the world were mocking her origins. One night, unable to bear it, she left home and went missing for 36 hours. When Nicole found Kat, spent, standing on a deserted bridge, staring down at the cold water, her heart nearly stopped. It was not an obvious attempt to do something irrevocable, but enough to make Nicole realize she had pushed her daughter to the brink. She said nothing. She simply held her, and for the first time cried like a mother with nothing left to cling to. Some mistakes take a minute to make and a lifetime to repay. The cost, she knew, does not always come from a gavel, but from the vacant look in her child's eyes. Ted learned what had nearly happened to Kat. Instead of rage or despair, a new kind of emotional numbness set in. He began to question himself. Was this fight worth it? In seeking clarity, had he driven a young woman into a crisis of identity? Was reclaiming his honor killing the spirit of a child who only ever wanted to be loved? Sleepless nights gnawed at him. For the first time since it began, Ted considered withdrawing the lawsuit. But life at Fairmont Crest is never that simple. Once a fire is lit, it does not extinguish easily. Nicole still faced public pressure, questions about Kat's true father, and headlines about the biggest paternity case in Maryland. Even if Ted let go, he could not reclaim what he had lost: trust, the standing of a father, and Kat's admiration. And though Kat came home, she was no longer the same. She was quiet, distant, with something in her eyes gone. Perhaps trust, perhaps childhood. And so, no matter who wins, all have already lost.